This is a true historical story, at least as recorded by the Venerable Bede. Does anyone happen to already know how it came to pass that in England people wrote poetry and songs in a religious context in English? Because that wasn't always the case. Until a point in the 7th century, everything in the church was in Latin. So this is the story of how a wise woman and a coward broke the monopoly of Latin. It's also the story of the first poet of the English language whose name we know. So it was the 7th century at a place called something like Stronachlach. It's now Whitby Abbey. And it was during the time when Abbess Hilda was in charge. Now, this was a time when, at least within the church, things were fairly more gender equal as far as leadership. So it was a double abbey, meaning they're both men and women. But the abbess was the head honcho. And she was a wise woman. Leaders from the church throughout the British Isles would travel all the way to Whitby to seek her advice in particular. She was a respected and wise woman. Now, it was also an active monastery, and what some people may not realize when they imagine a medieval monastery is what you really should be picturing is like the dining hall at one of the old colleges, because you got a bunch of basically college-age people. In this case, it was co-ed, but, a bunch of college-age guys with no real work to do, but they're stuck together all the time. Anyway, in this particular abbey, they had a tradition. Basically, every night after dinner, they would pass around a harp, and they would do what we're doing. Except, they would come up with spontaneous poetry in Latin. Think like modern rap battles, like freestyling, where you just, you're off the top of the head, except in Latin. Pretty sure none of them had Latin as their first language. Now, at this abbey, there was a guy who was just there to take care of the animals. This is the coward. Cowherd. I may have misled you earlier when I said he was a coward. He took care of the cattle and the other livestock. That was his job. He was not a religious, in a religious order. He was just there to take care of the animals, but it meant he got to live there. He may have slept in the stables, it's unclear. But he got to eat with them. I don't know whether the monks were teasing him or not, or if they were just trying to get him to feel welcome. But, they would always offer him a chance. But he doesn't know Latin. He can't read. How's he going to come up with a Latin whatever. Well, eventually this got to him until there came a night. Now, I like the version where he did, in fact, have to stay in the stables. That was the best lodging they could give him since he, hadn't taken religious orders. And he had a dream. A religious, epiphany kind of dream or whatever. And he had a vision in this dream of the creation of the world. So the story of Genesis, the first 2 chapters. And upon waking it stuck with him. And that night at dinner, he recalled this dream and, for all appearances, spontaneously produced a poem recounting the creation of the world. But he still didn't know Latin, so he did it in English. And it was good. And Hilda, the abbess, who became a saint, Saint Hilda, took this hymn, the Hymn of Cadman. It may or may not survive. I side with the scholars that say the ones we have labeled Cadman's hymn are not the one that he wrote that night, but he wrote a poem that night. Saint Hilda spread it around, and that was the impetus that broke that hard rule that everything must be in Latin. And finally, thanks to Saint Hilda and Cadman the cowherd, England got to experience their own faith in their own language. for the first time in centuries. With that, I am exhausted.
Very cool.